Jones. I live in Hyannis, lived there all my life, as did my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and my great-great-grandfather came from Sandwich of all places. But I got sand in my shoes and web feet, so I'm pretty comfortable in Hyannis. Len, to pick those special memories, I can think of a couple of things. One of the things I was really honored a few years ago when I was on the town council, but I was asked to be the keynote speaker over at Mosswoods on Memorial Day. And now that was it was Memorial Day. And it was an honor. I mean, I had been to those ceremonies as a kid, as a Boy Scout, and carrying the flags and things like that, and to be asked to speak at that was just it was an honor, and it'll always remain an honor. And I have some very, very nice letters that came through after it. And then I was asked to be the keynote speaker when the moving wall came to Hyannis also. And as a member of the JFK Trust, I've spoken many times at the ceremony we have on Memorial 29th and stuff, and it almost sometimes coincides with Memorial Day, but it's those type of things that really stand out in my mind. But having lived in the town all my life, there's just numerous honors and things that really stick out with me. I was a Boy Scout, I was an Eagle Scout, and from there I've served the town in numerous capacities, and I'm really proud to have served. Some have elected and some have appointed, but I guess it's that upbringing in Boy Scouts and being an Eagle Scout that pushes people on to, community service and things like that. It's too bad more people, don't go back to the Boy Scouts and their churches and things like that. It would be a different world. Isn't it? Oh, very much so. It's, and I hate to say not all for the good. When I was growing up, there wasn't anywhere near as much stress. I mean, and as kids, we got away with a lot of things that you'd get arrested for today, and and I can remember such shenanigans as when I was a lifeguard on Craigville Beach that. And I can't mention names because some of these people are still in the community and they're attorneys and they're this and they're high up and stuff, so I won't bring it. But we would do foolish things, especially if it's a cloudy day and nobody's on the beach. And one time when JFK was around, and they would come down on weekends and things, fly in with the 3 choppers and stuff. But there was one of the officers, which we called Hyannis Rent-A-Cops at the time. He was going to law school and things, and he's working as a police officer. He's a great guy, but he was really susceptible to pranks. So one time we got on the phone booth down the end of the parking lot and called the bathhouse and said, this is Sergeant so-and-so, and I won't mention that name either, but the First Lady is going to be coming through, and we want you to pull all the cars off the side of the road so the entourage can get through. They're heading over to Barnstable. So he goes out, and he's pulling all the cars off the road. And they're starting to back up, past Copel's Beach and things like this. And at the same time, one of the sergeants did come down, and he's looking at all these cars, and he said, what's going on? And he said, well, I got a call from the station, and they said the First Lady's coming through, and they told me to get all the people off the side of the road. So anyways, I don't know what the officer said to him, the sergeant said to him, but he came back into the parking lot, And all he said to us, he says, "I'll get you guys. I will get you guys." But it was that type of stuff. We probably would have been arrested today. I mean, but we're always looking for the fun and excitement. I spent 6 years on the beaches, 3 at Calmas Park and 3 at Craigville. And of course, the ones at Craigville, I was older, and so were my contemporaries. And I think we spent more time looking at the girls in their bikinis than we did the water. But it was just fun. It was just fun. It was a fun growing up, but things really got serious, and that's really sad. It's just sad. Oh, well, I graduated in '59. Principal was Briar Connors, and I played football and I ran track. I was not, one of the greatest stars on the team, but I played, and I also sang in the Glee Club and played in the orchestra and the town band, and did a lot of extracurricular activities. But through all of that, the only thing that really has stuck to today is I've been singing in the church choir for over 40 years, and so those are the basics you use. Music is such a great thing, and it's one of those things that can stick with you for your whole life. You can't play football your whole life, but you can certainly sing and enjoy it and appreciate it. I had Ma Hirsch for English in the in the 9th grade, and she told me that if I didn't take her class again next year, that she will pass me. So I don't think I was one of her greatest students, but interesting enough, I do a lot of writing today, but she didn't think I had much hope. But we had Bill Naylor. Bill Naylor was our class advisor, just a super guy. He was with us reunion-wise on numerous occasions. John Hughes was a football coach. He was a great guy too. I mean, things were nice that day. We might have complained about this teacher or that teacher, but not really. They were out for the kids, and it was a great experience. Well, I grew up on the water. My relatives in Chatham, which I grew up during the war and stuff, and summers my mother would send me down there because she had to work. She was a teacher, but she worked summers. She'd send me down to my grandparents, and they lived just down the road from the Chatham Light, and so the house is on Main Street, the corner of Andrew Harding's Lane, and that's the lane that goes right down there, right to the water. And I was on the water every day as a kid, up here, I mean, I got interested. I mean, I took the swimming and sailing lessons at the Hyannis Yacht Club, and also from Connie Drew, and my swimming lessons, believe it or not, is where the Lewis Bay Ramp is. And that was a swimming area, and they would lose people every once in a while because there was a steep drop off there. And at that time, you could swim in the harbor. I wouldn't want to take swimming lessons there today. That's a good question. Yachtsman condominiums, when they opened back in the 50s, I worked there the first couple of summers as an umbrella boy, and taking care of their boats and stuff. They used to be, at that time, where the condominium was a little lagoon there. And you could bring a boat in from around the bend and sail things like sailfishes and things like that. Even 28, 30-foot power boats could come around the corner. The channel in the high tide was good enough, and they would rent those out to guests in the hotel. And of course, the condominium project, it is what it is today, but those are all on pilings. You'd never get that passed today. They filled all that land from the dredge spoils when they dredged out at Calmas. And coming into the inner harbor, course, I lived on Ocean Street right across from Veterans Park and the Memorial. And when I was there, before the Memorial was there was Quonset huts from Otis and the Teachers College, Summer Teachers College. They'd stay in these huts. And the bathhouse was moved from there down to where it is now in Veterans Park. So, you know, a lot of changes there. And coming in, if you walk around the harbor in the last 20 years or so has almost completely revamped its stuff, updated. When I was in school and growing up, I mean, I used to, when I was in the school, which is now the Pope John School, I used to walk home, but I'd go down to the docks instead of going home. And at that time, it was just a straight dock. There was no finger piers, there was no nothing. The High Line, the Sciasconset had just moved in, started running out of Hyannis back in the 50s. Okay, it wasn't the High Line at that time. And the only sightseeing boat there was Perk Hall, and Perk Hall was a mute. And he was just the nicest guy in the world, always had a smile on his face. But he couldn't converse with you, and he conversed by, when you asked him a question he could hear, he'd have to write it out on a slip of paper and show it to you. And he had a catboat, and that was the first sightseeing boat that I ever knew on the harbor. It grew from there, and going in, still staying in the 50s or so. I mean, you know, where Anchor Outboard was and things like that, I mean, that's all filled land in there. There was marsh, you know, marshes all around the harbor and in where the boat ramp is. I mean, I've got pictures that is just, you know, just marsh grass. So most of the harbor really has been dredged out. It's not a man-made harbor, but it's certainly, to become navigable, it's all been dredged out. And going around, I used to work at Baxter's Boathouse Club, the opening night that they opened back then. Barney and I were friends, and we used to pally around together and different things, and I worked for them. And that was when they changed from a fish market to a fish market. They had a fish market and a restaurant. Then they moved just to a restaurant. And as a side story, when that happened, they were going to do that. Barney came down one time. I was living in a rental in Yarmouth and stuff with a couple of guys. And he said, well, let's have a clam bake today. And he said, you know, you guys go dig the clams. He said, I'll bring the lobsters. And we said, that's a deal, and get the seaweed and stuff. And he said to another guy, he says, you go up Main Street and pick up some girls and bring them down to the clam bake. Yeah, they did. So we went, once we were doing, Paul White was living there at the time. I don't know if you Paul's the wood carver over in Sandwich, but he and Barney were living in the same house there. And with their wives. And so we went over to the fish market, and Barney took a bushel basket and went into the lobster tanks and filled that bushel basket with lobsters. Oh my God, I can't tell you, I've never seen so many. Cooked them up in the big copper pot and then brought them across the street to where we were having the clam bake. And I love lobsters, but boy, this one did me in. I couldn't, you know, I usually eat everything, nothing goes to waste, but no, man, it's just claws and tails, that's it. So, but, you know, it has grown since then, as you know. I mean, the Anchor Outboard has come in. All new bulkheading is gone in Bismore Park. I was on the Park and Recreation Commission back in the early 70s, and we had Bismore Park, you know, under our control, and it was an elected office back then. And you know, so I did a lot of work on that, and trying to get, we got into, some of the slips and things of this nature, and they did, by that time they had waiting lists and things, which was a joke. It's just, hey Joe, you want a dock? Yeah, okay, I think we can find you one. And but from going around right now today, if you go around, everything is really kind of fresh bulkheading, fresh docks and stuff going around to Wayne. Wayne's got a first-class, world-class marina there. Anchor Outboard, I mean, they've done some wonderful upgrades, and they keep that place neat as a pin. And of course, the ramp is now it's a terrific ramp. I had my finger in on that when I was on the Waterways Committee, and that's a long story, but it took several years to get it to where it became reality. And the state, kind of reneged on it. I was on the Waterways Committee at that time, and the state was looking for a deep water ramp. There's hardly any deep water ramps on the south side. They usually just, show ramps. So they were looking at Yarmouth, and anyways, I found out about it, so I called Jack Shepard, who's the State Access Board, and he's still on the State Access Board, and told him, of the Lewis Bay ramp. Well, they knew about it and things, and so I asked him if he'd come down and take a look, and he said yes. And they came down, and we made it. This was still in the waterways here, and when he said, he looked at it and said, well, it isn't big enough for us to put funds in. It has to be at least 20 parking spaces for truck and trailer. So at that, I just happened to, this is a series of events now at the time, and I was in this room right here, and Warren Rutherford was the town manager at the time, and right at that door I'm looking at right now, Warren was coming out, and I said, Warren, I said, we need additional parking spaces for the state to be able to come in and give us funds and money for this thing. And I said, in the steamship right now, you're negotiating with the steamship on the property on Yarmouth Road and the town building and stuff like that. And I said, and also with the parking area, Lewis Bay parking area. And I said, we need at least 10 parking spaces there. So, and it's got to be within 500 feet of the ramp, which that qualified. And I said, if we do that, we can qualify for the state funds to come down and put this ramp in. So a while later, I get a call from Warren. He said he was delighted. He said, we're looking for some mitigating things to do, because he couldn't find it, and this was terrific. He got 42 parking spaces, or 21 truck and trailer. So now, bingo, we've got more than enough to do that. So it's back to Jack Shepard. We're qualified and stuff. He came down here, got with the DPW. They took that under their wing, and they're pushing it forward. Series of events and whatever, and it finally, I was off the council by the time it became a reality, but it was one of those things that I'm saying, this is great. The town needed this so badly, and I was kind of pleased that I had at least a little finger into it. So. Oh, huge. Bob Scudder was my next door neighbor, and he didn't live on the water. Dick did, and Dick is had a real good friend. I mean, I've been to Bermuda with he and Marge and stayed in their condo with them and things like that, and the family I'm very close to and stuff. They revolutionized the harbor. I mean, first of all, the Scudders and the sightseeing boats and things of this nature. They just built it up, and what a great job they've done. And they've got a good company. They have to be, on the island stuff, they have to be licensed by the Steamship Authority. And some of that stuff goes from the enabling legislation put on the Steamship Authority when they came in and stuff. But we've worked very closely with them throughout the years, and it's been a better and better partnership. But going back to Bob and Dick, I mean, they started out with I forget what the sightseeing boat was, but a little small sightseeing boat, and they just grew. I mean, times were right. The Kennedys came in. That just, really spurred a lot of interest because you could see more from the water than you could from land. And they just grew. They took risks. I mean, they tried to go with the Pilgrim Belle, which is a cruise ship, ran aground coming into the dock on its maiden voyage in front of the thing. But no, they really revolutionized the waterfront. And Wayne, likewise. I mean, I've never met anybody as aggressive and as tenacious as Wayne is in getting the job done. He's built that into really into a world-class marina. It has everything. And I remember one day, I was over there, Wayne and I are good friends, and that he was in a hole digging a trench to put in cabling and conduit, between the main building and Trader Ed's out there and stuff. And I was just talking to him. I mean, he's sweating and stuff and digging a hole, and a customer came down and said, looked at it, and he said, I want to talk to the owner. He was hot under the collar for something, I don't know. And so he looks at me, and I said, well, I said, he's right here. And he said, no, I want to talk to the owner. And I said, well, okay. I said, maybe he's inside, I don't know. Well, then he comes back, and he says, and you're the owner? To Wayne. Yeah, how can I help you? Well, he handled it, but the funny part of it is, he's just such a hands-on guy. Yeah, he's a great guy. Okay, well, I'm a trustee of the memorial, and I was on the memorial by virtue of committee early on by virtue of the fact that I was chairman of the Park and Recreation Commission for a number of years. And that, they put a representative on there. And that started by Judge Murphy and Carl Schultz and Penn's and a whole lot of concerned citizens saying, to honor the President of the United States. And they did all of the funding and put it together and built the memorial. And it was probably 3-4 years after his death that it came to be. And they had a pool in the middle, as you know, and at that time, I mean, thousands upon thousands of people came, and everybody was throwing quarters and stuff in the pool. Well, they were gathering so much money, they didn't know what to do with it. I mean, they were, gathering thousands of nickels and dimes and quarters and stuff. So they formed the Trust Fund Committee, and the Trust Fund Committee was formed with the idea of supporting the youth of the town, okay? And the Kennedy Trust started the sailing program there, and that has been going ever since that time, and it's a hugely successful program. And I got off for a while, but then I was asked to go back on it, and I just love it because it's not a big commitment. I mean, we do a few things and stuff, but being able to support the kids and the sailing program and things like that, and honor the President of the United States. I mean, that's pretty important. And the fund has grown, which is good. I don't like funds personally growing too much. What's the sense of saving money? I mean, the funds go in to use the money for, kids programs and things like that.
Yeah.
But to me, it's hugely successful. Now that the memorial is aging, so and that may be a major thing to redo that plaza. I don't think I motivated them at all. I mean, they share the same love of the water and love for the town that I do. Both of them live in Centerville. My daughter, she's married to a police officer here in town, Travis Brown, and my daughter's CJ, and they have 3 children. The oldest is 4, and the youngest are twins, and they're 2.5, and they're all boys, and it's like herding cats. I've never seen any 3 people who can get into so much things at any one time. I mean, it just, when they come over to the house, I mean, I'm just saying, Carolyn, this is fine, but I'm going nuts. But they're the cutest things you ever want to see a picture. No, and my daughter, my son's a contractor here in town, and he's married to a gal that does physical training and things. So it's a close family, and as I say, they have no reason to leave. Where else would you go? I mean, to me, there's not another place on this earth, and I've visited a lot of places, and things like that. But when you go down and you get a chance to be alone on the beaches and things like that, it's clean and it's neat. It's nature. I mean, but you have to find that one spot that there isn't 40 people around you too.
Have you found it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You want to share it with our audience, or you want to keep it a secret?
Well, I can tell you that every time I go to get my mail at Hyannis Port, in the winter, it's a nice day, I'll drive up Sunset Hill. Sometimes I look over at the water, but often, I'll take the first road on your left, and there's an overview. And I stop there, and there's usually seals on the rocks at low tide, and I take my binoculars and watch the seals. It's so, in the winter, it's just very quiet, and the beach is right there, and you hear the lapping of the waves and things. It's just relaxing. I mean, that's why I live here. I do a lot of, community work that, like the Cape Cod Maritime Museum and things of that nature. But I find I do a lot of woodworking in my shop. I like to build furniture and sometimes some sea chests and things. And, sometimes I'll go down to the Hyannis Yacht Club and have a 50-cent cup of coffee in the morning with the coffee Commodores and complain about the world. So, yeah, I find enough. As I said, I sing in the choir, and I've got enough to keep me busy, and the grandkids. Okay, Bob Jones, live in the village of Hyannis, town of Barnstable.